only 2 vessels of the 3 vessel tracheal view. The penny drops. This baby has got transposition of the great arteries. Another baby at 13 weeks of gestation, you expect to see the pulmonary artery coming out like this, but instead the pulmonary artery comes out in a reverse direction. Another baby who's got a hypoplastic left heart and transposition of the great artery, small left ventricle, and you sweep expecting to see the pulmonary artery like so, but no, the pulmonary artery comes out like so, out of the right anterior head. It's a very powerful exercise of the 4-chamber and a 3-vessel tracheal view. When you go to work tomorrow morning and you are scanning a baby's heart, let me ask you, you turn on color Doppler to look at the heart. What do you set your PRF at? It's a very important question to ask yourself, is what is the PRF? You need to understand that there are 3 controls in color. There's the PRF, there's the gain output, the color power output, and the color gain. If you set these correctly, a baby at 25 weeks, around 50 to 60 centimeters a second, first, the PRF. 2, I increase the output, maintaining mechanical and thermal index less than 1. 3, I use gain. In that order. So it's very important to understand PRF first, and output is like amplitude, shouting loud. That is a loud power. The echo that comes back is the gain. So if you increase gain from a returning echo, there's no risk to a baby, no risk at all. But if you shout loud at the baby, that's power output. So this is power, and this is the returning echo. This is increasing gain, no risk. Everybody goes straight to gain. They say too much color, turn down gain. Not enough color, turn up gain. This is a mistake. The first question you ask is, what is my PRF? So you need to understand that the PRF changes through pregnancy. First trimester, 25 to 35. Second trimester, 45 to 65. Third trimester, 65 to 80. So the first thing I do when looking at any baby's heart is I look at the PRF and say, what are the settings? So I get a knock on the door, Simon, I think the baby's got aortic stenosis. And I say, oh, wait, let me look. She said there's aliasing across the aortic valve. I said, oh yeah, that looks abnormal. The first thing I do is I go up in the top left-hand corner, see she's 32 weeks of gestation, and the PRF is set at 40. There's aliasing. So I say, no, wait. I say, first of all, let me look at the aorta. I see the valve is prominent. I see the aorta is slightly dilated, slightly distal to the valve. It looks bigger. But when I increase my PRF, my Z-score is okay, but when I increase the PRF, I look at this, it's slightly dilated aorta, but I increase the PRF, and next thing, my aliasing disappears as I increase the PRF. This baby is normal, completely normal, but it can be made look abnormal if your PRF is set too low. Simon, knock on the door. I think this baby's got pulmonary stenosis. I walk in the door, I see 22 weeks of gestation, I see it's up around 61 centimeters a second, and I said, well, yes, I think you're right. And I keep increasing the PRF, and the aliasing does not disappear. Then I know, yes, I think this baby has got pulmonary stenosis. But the first thing I do each time is I check the PRF. First thing. Then I go to the output, then I go to the gain. Before I make up my mind, is there a problem, yes or no? And then I go to pulse Doppler. Frequency. I would say for every examination that I do, and for live scanning today to you, when you were scanning with me, you realize that I never scan with one probe. I always change probes. Because I don't know what the best probe is until I've tried another probe. Then I know. I guess by looking at the size of the mother first as to what probe to start, low frequency, high frequency. But I never set it for one probe. It only takes 2 seconds to change probe, and it can make a big difference. This is a baby with a bilateral superior vena cava and low frequency. This is a baby with a bilateral superior vena cava with a high frequency. You can see the extra vessels so much more easily. So as you run from a low frequency to an intermediate to a high frequency probe, you can see that the extra vessel is much easier to see with the high frequency. And if you go to your golden rules, this is the trachea, transverse aortic arch, pulmonary artery, and therefore this is the extra vessel. Without looking at the fourth chamber, because I know my trachea rule number 1. Two of these. Next rule is to check every baby when you do a scan. And again, I did it this morning in 2U. For every scan that I scanned this morning, I did a split screen and I demonstrated a picture of the stomach, which I confirmed was on the left first, and then the fourth chamber view part. It is so easy to miss situs and versus. Every sonographer and every doctor in my hospital has to produce that image and save on PACS. And if you do that, you're very likely you're unlikely to miss situs anomalies. Golden rule number 100. This is a very helpful rule. So you see a baby where you see that there's alias and you ask a question. You say, I put on a pulse Doppler and it's 110 and she's 34 weeks. Is that normal? Well, not normal. You say, well, I wonder. So do you have a chart on the wall and you look at the velocities? Because you know that every baby, for every week of gestation, the velocity increases. It's slower at 12 weeks, it's faster at 20 weeks, it's even faster at 36 weeks. For every week of gestation, the velocity of flow in every single chamber and every single vessel in the baby increases in velocity. So, do you have a chart in your room? Well, let me say to you, I'll make it very easy for you. Because there's no week in gestation where it is more than 100. And that's a very, very helpful rule. Without using any chart, if you find a velocity that's more than 100, you know it's likely that you're looking at a problem. This shows the mitral valve, the tricuspid valve, the aortic valve, and the main pulmonary artery in 13 weeks up to 36 weeks, produced by Zita Adair very recently. And what you will notice is that 100 centimeters a second is above the 99th percentile for every single week of gestation. And therefore, I know if the velocity is more than 100, I have to be suspicious. It's very, very helpful rule. The second extremely helpful rule, you go to the hospital tomorrow, and tomorrow morning you scan the baby and you say the left ventricular outflow tract looks a little bit dilated. You see your left ventricle. You say, does this baby have aortic stenosis? You see aliasing. And next thing, you look at the velocity of flow across the aortic valve. And when you do so, you see the velocity is 105 centimeters a second. And you say to yourself, does this baby have aortic stenosis? Yes or no? You say, it's only increased by a little bit, Simon. Are you sure the baby with your 100 rule has aortic stenosis? The next thing I do is, I place the pulse Doppler gauge over the pulmonary and I compare the pulmonary to the aorta. And I can see the pulmonary is 45 centimeters and this is 105. This baby has got aortic stenosis because I've broken the 100 rule, number 1, and 2, when I compare it to the pulmonary, it's double the velocity of the pulmonary. Everybody in this room knows that in babies, the velocity on the left-hand side and the right-hand side of the heart are almost the same, almost identical. So if you're ever suspicious about there being a problem with flow on one side of the heart or the other, compare to the other side. Also, this is black. That tells me laminar. This is white. That tells me turbulent. So when I look at this baby who I saw very recently, and I look at the pulse Doppler velocity across the pulmonary valve, because this is the trachea, the aorta, and the artery, I'm getting velocities just over 85, 95 centimeters a second. And I say, is that pulmonary stenosis? Yes or no? Then I jump to the aorta and I look at the left ventricular outflow tract and I compare the velocities. Less than 100 with aliasing, but compared to the aortic valve, this baby has got mild pulmonary artery stenosis because the velocities across the aortic valve are much, much less. They should be the same. They are 40 centimeters a second. So this is less than 100 centimeters, but compared to the other artery, it is aliasing. And this is the baby with pulmonary valve stenosis. Short axis view. Remember, when looking at the short axis, it's a very, very difficult view for obstetricians to get. Cardiologists after birth examine babies' hearts on the short axis routinely. We don't. We find it very hard. So then I say to you, how do you get a short axis of the heart, and why is it important to get a short axis of the heart? The first thing is, you will never get a short axis when the apex is up at 12 o'clock. Forget it. You have to bring the heart on the side and then rotate the transducer 90 degrees. Then you will get a short axis. And why is it important to get a short axis? Okay, the heart is on the side. Perfect. Now, flip the transducer 90 degrees and watch, you see the appearance of the tricuspid aortic valve. 90-degree twist. And now the tricuspid valve is on top. You can see the three leaflets. And then this is the mitral valve on the bottom. This is a normal valve. This is a baby who's got a common AV valve defect. Cine loop, you can see the common AV valve. And it's only by doing the short axis. So this baby, you come around up to the level of the AV valves, and as you do so, you see the interventricular septum, you come up higher, and now you see the common AV valve. Cine loop, slow it down. You can watch in systole, and you can watch in diastole. As you're watching systole and diastole, you can now see completely the valve. If you see a band of tissue, then it is partial. So you can only tell if it is partial or complete on the short axis. Also, when you are seeing this baby, you say, this baby looks good, no ventricular septal defect. And you then move to the left ventricular outflow tract, normal left ventricular outflow tract. But when you go from the left to the right, look, you can see at the right ventricular outflow tract, this is a very high VSD. And I know it's high because on the short axis, I can see it exactly here. It is very, very anterior. Most VSDs are here. This is extremely high at the right ventricular outflow tract view. So looking at the outflow tract septum, this is a difficult view for obstetricians to get into view. How do you get this view? Number one, you sweep from a four-chamber out to right ventricular outflow tract. So you sweep, and you get the pulmonary artery coming in, and then you rotate on the right ventricle. And when you rotate on the right ventricle, you get the tricuspid valve, and here you get the pulmonary valve. So the tricuspid valve, the pulmonary valve, and the Mercedes-Benz sign of the aorta. This is a very important section in looking for obstruction of the right ventricular outflow tract in babies with tetralogy of Fallot. It's also very important when we look at the outlet VSDs and the membranous VSDs. So if your VSD is the pulmonary valve, if your VSD is here, 2 o'clock, it's outflow. If it's below the tricuspid valve, it's membranous. So that's a rule how to get to that section. This is a baby who's got an outlet VSD. This is the tricuspid valve, this is the pulmonary valve, and now you see the defect here, at this point here, is a subpulmonary outflow tract VSD. So 4-chamber, right ventricular outflow tract, rotate on the right ventricle. Lastly, angle of inclination. When you're examining, looking for the AV valves, I recommend to look with the apex at 12 o'clock, not the apex at 3 o'clock. When looking for a baby with a partial or